Connected. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Level up. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Level up. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Connection lost. Connected. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Level up. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Shield charge. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Level up. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Shield lost. Shield charge. Buffer depleted. Level up. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Level up. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Level up. Shield lost. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Shield. Buffer depleted. Level up. Explosive sound. Shield lost. Buffer depleted. Shield. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Shield lost. Shield charge. Extra life. Left. Explosive sound. Shield lost. Buffer depleted. Level up. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Level up. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Level up. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Shield charge. Shield lost. Buffer depleted. Connection lost. Buffer depleted. Connected. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Shield. Explosive sound. Level up. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Explosive sound. Level up. Shield charge. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. 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 explosive sound, buffer depleted, buffer depleted, explosive sound, level up, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, shield, explosive sound, buffer depleted, buffer depleted, shield level up, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, buffer depleted, explosive sound, shield lock, buffer depleted, shield charge, explosive sound, buffer depleted, level up, explosive sound, explosive sound, energy lost, connected, explosive sound, buffer depleted, shield charge, explosive sound, buffer depleted, 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 explosive sound, shield with connection lost, connected, explosive sound, shield charge, explosive sound, level up, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, extra life, level up, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, level up, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, shield lost, buffer depleted, shield charge, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, level up, explosive sound, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, buffer depleted, shield, explosive sound, buffer depleted, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, shield lost, explosive sound, shield lost, shield charge, explosive sound, shield lost, buffer depleted, explosive sound, 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 explosive sound, buffer depleted, 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 explosive sound, shield lost, buffer depleted, explosive sound, buffer depleted, explosive explosive sound. Buffer depleted, explosive sound. Buffer depleted, explosive sound. Shield lock, buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted, buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Buffer depleted. Explosive sound. Level up, buffer depleted. Shield buffer depleted. Connection lost. Connected. Buffer depleted. Connection lost. Game over.